The Riordanverse centers on a lot of demigods, gods, monsters, and a lot of supernatural beings, but we also got introduced to many mortals, specifically through the mortal parents of the demigods we meet in the books. In my previous video, I tier ranked the Olympians to see who was the best godly parent, and I thought of doing the same thing here in this video, but instead of the gods, I'll be ranking the mortal parents we meet in PJO, Heroes of Olympus, The Trials of Apollo, Magnus Chase, and the Kane Chronicles. As expected, there will be spoilers for those books I just mentioned, and before getting into the ranking, here are the tiers I'll be placing these characters in. First is the best parent, or for the highest tier. Good would be the second tier for parents who I think are good enough, but can't be really considered the best parents still. Okay for people who are alright, but I wouldn't fully recommend them as parents. Don't recommend for the second to the last tier, and run for the last tier. And with all that said, let's get started. The first one I see over here is Maria D'Angelo from the PJO series. I'm placing her in good. Maria D'Angelo is the mortal mother of the demigods Nico and Bianca D'Angelo, and we don't really know too much about her, mainly because she was already dead by the time of the PJO books. However, we do see her in flashbacks in The Last Olympian, and we even got to know more of her through her children, especially Nico D'Angelo. In books like The Sun and the Star, we realize that Nico and Maria were very close. Nico loved his mother so much, and all his memories with his mother were characterized by warmth and safety. Maria loved her kids, and she was determined to protect them no matter what, to the point that this cost her her life. Before the events of the PJO series, there was the Great Prophecy, or the prophecy that talks about a demigod child of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, who would one day turn 16 and make a decision that would either destroy or save Olympus. However, Hades already had Nico and Bianca even before this prophecy was announced, but based on the prophecy, they could be used against the gods. To prevent this, Zeus told Hades to send Nico and Bianca to Camp Haplet for safety and training, but Hades disagreed because he had a hunch that Zeus wanted to control Nico and Bianca for himself. Because of this, Hades brought Nico, Bianca, and Maria D'Angelo to a hotel, and there, Hades and Maria talked about the situation. Hades told Maria that they should send the kids to the underworld to hide, because Hades knew that Zeus would want to kill them. However, Maria disagreed. Her care for her kids shined truly in this moment, because she talked Hades out of sending the kids to the underworld, and emphasized that she wanted a brighter and more normal future for her demigod kids. This scene actually could have been a sweet moment, but it ended in tragedy, as Zeus struck the hotel with lightning to kill them all. Hades was able to protect both Nico and Bianca, but the blast unfortunately killed Maria D'Angelo. Ultimately, with all this information, I'm placing Maria D'Angelo in the good tier. Although she only had a few moments with her family, she was remembered as a loving and caring mother to her kids, and I think she deserves to be called a great parent. Moving on, let's head to Paul Blofis. Paul is immediately going to Best Parent. We first meet Paul in the third book of the PJO series, or The Titan's Curse. We see him with Percy's mother, Sally Jackson, and eventually, Sally and Paul end up getting married and having a daughter named Estelle Jackson Blofis. Even if we don't see Paul so much in the books, it's clear he was a very good father. He's caring to both Percy and Estelle, and he was there for Sally through thick and thin in the books. He loves his family so much, and he's overall a very chill guy. So I think he deserves to be up there. Next is Frederick Chase, or Annabeth Chase's father from the PJO series. Okay, I know a lot of people hate Frederick, and for a while I did too. Based on Annabeth's stories in the first book of PJO, or The Lightning Thief, it was clear that Annabeth and Frederick's relationship is very complicated. Annabeth openly hates Frederick in that book, to the point that she even tells Percy that she wouldn't hesitate to leave her father to rot, which already shows you how she feels about him. Annabeth felt anger and frustration towards him for many years, but in some way, she did appreciate him. The biggest example of which was when she continued to keep her father's college ring after he mailed it to her during her early years in Camp Haplet. Annabeth held on to that ring, and she even placed it in her Camp Haplet necklace as a token. It's a small moment, but it really shows that deep down, despite the frustration she had with her dad, he still somewhat mattered to her. But let's look at the bigger picture and check out Frederick Chase himself. Frederick is a military history professor at West Point. He was a very brilliant man, and that's what drew Athena, or the goddess of wisdom and war, to him. Athena appreciated Frederick so much that she helped him get into Harvard University, and the two were very close friends. And I want to repeat that. They were close friends. Athena is a virgin goddess, and that means she won't ever do romance with mortals. However, she does appreciate mortals once in a while like Frederick, and as a token of appreciation, she would give them kids. And this is how a baby Annabeth Chase ended up on Frederick's doorstep. Frederick was stunned to find her there, especially because, in his eyes, he couldn't have had a kid with Athena, because, again, they weren't even dating. Frederick tried to give Annabeth back to Athena, but Athena refused and told him that the mortal parents are the ones who raised demigod children. And moving on from that, Frederick would go on to raise Annabeth, but he soon got married to an unnamed woman, and they had 2 kids together named Bobby and Matthew Chase. Things seemed fine in Frederick's eyes, but this was the complete opposite to how Annabeth felt. I mean, it was clear that he cared about her, but he was pretty neglectful at times, especially when she truly needed his support. And let me explain. As a demigod, Annabeth is prone to monster attacks, and she would often get spider attacks sent by Arachne, or Athena's mortal enemy. Annabeth had tried to tell Frederick about the attacks, but the evidence of the attacks cleared up whenever she tried to do this, so there wasn't any proof for Frederick or his wife to really understand Annabeth. Instead of talking to her further about what happened though, Frederick chose to side with his wife, and he let his wife tell Annabeth that she was making things up and scaring her younger brothers. This went on for years, and Annabeth would often have fights with her parents. The situation became so bad that Annabeth eventually ran away from home at just the age of 7. And ever since then, Annabeth decided to never look back, which is why she gets very snappy and defensive every time her family is brought up in the first book of PJO. However, by the end of that book, the demigod Percy Jackson managed to convince her to come back to her mortal family and give them another chance, which is why Annabeth ends up going home. But by the Sea of Monsters, or the next book, we slowly learn that Annabeth did not enjoy her stay with her family again. According to her, things didn't work out again. And at this point, you gotta wonder what kind of parent Frederick was to make Annabeth leave a second time. This was kind of answered in the next installment, or the Titan's Curse. The Titan's Curse formally introduced us to Frederick, and he's written in a very interesting way. Around this time, Annabeth was kidnapped, and Percy and the rest were on a quest to save her. They needed a means of transportation, and since they were pretty desperate, Thalia had the idea of going over to Frederick's house to borrow the car. When they entered, Percy described Frederick as looking like a mad genius who was honestly a big dork. He was a brilliant professor deeply immersed in his work, but he seemed to overlook his surroundings. Like, let's go through the scene in the Titan's Curse. Found in chapter 16, we meet the dragon of eternal bad breath. There, we see Frederick go around the house, and he was very absent-minded. He misplaces his keys, he briefly forgets about Annabeth's kidnapping when talking to the hunter Zoe Nightshade, and his wife even tells him jokingly, "Frederick, honestly, you'd lose your head if it weren't wrapped inside your aviator hat. The keys are hanging on the peg by the front door." All of these moments point to the idea that Frederick can be a very smart guy, but he's also not the most present parent. In fact, I would argue that his wife is probably the only one managing the household, and Frederick's role is pretty limited. Given everything we talked about though, I'm placing Frederick in okay. He's a brilliant guy who loves his family, but he's definitely not the best parent out there. After Frederick is his sister, Natalie Chase. Natalie is also the mother of Magnus Chase, which makes Magnus Annabeth's cousin. She's going to the best tier. Natalie, Frederick, and Randolph are all siblings, and out of the 3 of them, Natalie was always my favorite. She was bright, funny, caring, and she was a very good parent to Magnus. She loved very deeply, and this love extended to her lover, Frey, or the Norse god of peace, and her son, Magnus Chase. Although Frey had to leave them like the average godly parent, she didn't feel any resentment against this, simply because she loved them so much, and because their relationship was just that good. She also went on to raise Magnus all on her own, and she taught him survival skills, which really helped him when he became homeless years later. Natalie cared for Magnus so much that she literally sacrificed herself to save him when Fenrir and his wolves attacked their apartment. Her last act was an act of intense love, and I honestly think she's so underrated. Next is Naomi Solace, or Will Solace's mother. Naomi is going to best parent as well. For a long time, we didn't really know who Will's mother was, but this all changed in The Sun and the Star. We don't exactly meet Naomi in this book, but we do know that she was very supportive and caring towards Will. Will remembers fond memories of his mother, and we learn she was actually an alt-country singer from Texas. She would often hold tours and concerts, and she brought her son along with her. We finally met Natalie in the next installment of The Court of the Dead, and she was exactly what I expected. She was warm, kind, and nothing but supportive of Will. She loved him so much, and I honestly think she's another underrated character. Up next is Emily Zhang, or Frank Zhang's mother. We don't really know much about Emily, as she died before the Heroes of Olympus series even started. However, she was a very memorable person for her son, Frank. In Frank's chapters in The Son of Neptune, we learn that Emily was a Canadian soldier who died in the war in Afghanistan while saving a comrade's life. She was such an exceptional soldier that she attracted the literal god of war, Mars. Mars also praised Emily for her skill in The Son of Neptune, and it was clear that she was a very kind person and mother, especially towards her son, Frank. Frank describes just a few memories from his mother, which involved talking about his family gift from his ancestor, Pericles, and even warning him about his firewood curse. Frank loved his mother so much, and even if we don't really know much about her, I'll still place her in the best tier as well. She was a great mom who gave her life for another person, and she's someone Frank will forever miss. After Emily is Marie Levesque, or Hazel Levesque's mother. This one is very complicated for a lot of reasons, and let me explain. Marie Levesque was a fortune teller, and with the help of the goddess Hecate, she was able to summon Pluto, or the Roman god of the underworld. Pluto and Marie ended up falling in love, and they soon had a daughter named Hazel. After Hazel's birth, Pluto was very happy that he told Marie that he swore in the river Styx that he would give her anything she wanted. Marie took this opportunity to ask for all the riches in the world, and when she said this, Pluto was horrified. Pluto told Marie that it was too risky of a wish, but since he technically swore in the river Styx already, he had no choice but to grant her wish. Marie's wish materialized in Hazel. Growing up, Hazel had the ability to summon jewels and riches from the ground, and Marie would actually sell all of these to get more money. But eventually, she realized that all of the people who bought from her soon became injured or died randomly. The jewels Hazel summoned were cursed, and instead of owning up to her mistake, Marie took out her frustration on Hazel. She blamed Hazel for the curses the jewels brought, and it's even implied that Marie hated Hazel for a long time, which can be very detrimental to a child. A couple of years after this, Marie would be approached by the earth goddess Gaia. Gaia manipulated Marie because she wanted to use Marie to wake up her giant son, Alcyones. Marie fell for Gaia's plan, and the next thing Hazel knew, she and her mother were heading to Alaska. There, Marie ordered Hazel to keep summoning more and more jewels, and Hazel worked day and night just to please her mother. This went on for a while, until a pretty insane thing happened. One night, Hazel went looking for her mother, and she found Marie in a cave with Gaia. Around this time, Marie finally snapped out of Gaia's manipulation, and this leads up to the moment when Marie decides to sacrifice herself to save Hazel and stop Gaia. Before she could do this though, Hazel stepped in and summoned all of the riches in the cave, which exploded the place and pretty much killed both Hazel and Marie. Hazel and Marie soon woke up in the underworld, and since Marie worked with Gaia and almost caused a lot of chaos if Alcyones actually woke up, the three fates of the underworld decided that Marie should be sentenced to the fields of punishment, where she would suffer for all eternity. Meanwhile, they recognized Hazel's sacrifice and were willing to place her in Elysium, or realm for heroes. When hearing about this, Hazel stepped in again to defend her mother, which was a really big moment because she was defending a person who practically used her both to get rich and to please Gaia. Hazel pleaded with the fates to not place her mother in the fields of punishment, and after this, Hazel and Marie were both sentenced to the fields of Asphodel, or a realm for people who weren't that bad or that good. And that's the whole picture of Marie Levesque. She was a very flawed mother, and she had a pretty complicated relationship with Hazel. She loved Hazel, but she usually neglected and mistreated Hazel so many times that I had to place her in Don't Recommend. The only reason I didn't place her in the bottom tier is because by the end of her life, she chose to save Hazel and own up to her mistakes. So I think she is quite forgivable, but overall, not a very good parent. Next is Tristan McLean, or Piper McLean's father from the Heroes of Olympus. Okay, this one is kind of complicated too. We first hear of Tristan from Piper's perspective in The Lost Hero, and we learn that Piper loved her dad, but also disliked them quite a lot. To give more context, Tristan is a movie actor, and this made him very busy. He would often leave Piper alone at home, and this made Piper try her best to get his attention. It came to the point that she actually started stealing to get in trouble on purpose and make her dad notice her. And a big highlight of this was when she actually stole a whole BMW before the events of The Lost Hero. As expected, she got in trouble, and she even got sentenced to the wilderness school where she would meet the demigods Leo Valdez and Jason Grace. Although it was clear that Piper was frustrated with her dad, we actually got to understand why Tristan was distant to Piper by the end of The Lost Hero. There, Tristan explained he was actually pulling himself away from Piper on purpose because he didn't want to bring her into the crazy life that fame brought him. And from this point, Piper and Tristan became closer. But there was one problem in their relationship, and let me explain. During the events of The Lost Hero, Tristan was kidnapped by giants, and the experience traumatized him so much that Piper gave him a potion to erase all the memories of what happened. This helped, but this also meant that Tristan didn't fully understand Piper's situation most of the time. This was mainly evident in the Burning Maze, wherein Piper had to lie about how Jason died to her father because that meant she had to explain the supernatural world to him. Personally, I don't really think this is a bad thing, but it is a bit of an obstacle, because that means that Piper can't be fully honest with him. Overall though, I think Tristan is still a good parent. He tries his best to be there for Piper whatever he can, but they kind of lack good communication with one another, especially since Piper felt neglected most of the time when she was a kid. So, given all this, I'll place him in the OK tier. Next is Gabe Ugliano, and this is a very obvious choice to the Run tier. We only met Gabe in The Lightning Thief or the first book of the PJO series, and he was nothing but an abusive jerk to not just Percy, but also to his wife, Sally. He was so horrible that Sally and Percy gladly turned him into stone with Medusa's head by the end of that book. And honestly, I still love that ending. To me, he's pretty much the worst parent in the entire Riordanverse. After Gabe is Esperanza Valdez, or Leo Valdez's mother from the Heroes of Olympus. She's going to the best parent tier immediately for me. We don't really know too much about Esperanza because she died before the events of The Lost Hero, but from what we know, she was a very kind mother to Leo. She taught him how to speak Spanish, do complex math, work on machines, and Leo absolutely loved his mother, which is why her death was honestly one of the most devastating ones in the series. She could have continued to be a great parent to Leo if she had lived, and because of that, I think she belongs here. Next is Mr. Alderman from the Magnus Chase trilogy. I mean, is this even a question? He's obviously going to the Run tier with Gabe. Like Gabe Ugliano, Mr. Alderman is one of the worst parents in the Riordanverse. He mistreated his deaf son Hearthstone for many years, and even said that Heart should have died instead of his other son Andiron, which is just horrible to say to your child. And he did all this especially because Hearth was born deaf. He mocked Hearth whenever Heart tried to speak in ASL, and made Hearth use a board to communicate. And even then, he still ridiculed him. So clearly, Mr. Alderman is a horrible, horrible person and father, and he absolutely belongs in this tier. After Mr. Alderman is Beryl Grace, or Jason and Thalia Grace's mother. I think she's going to Run as well, which might be slightly controversial given that I just placed her in the same tier as Gabe and Mr. Alderman, who are such horrible people already, but hear me out on this. Personally, I think Beryl was not a suitable parent in any way possible, and let's go through it. Beryl Grace was a popular actress, and she was known to have drinking problems throughout her career. Although she was famous, she was also very infamous for doing all sorts of stupid publicity stunts just to get in the headlines, and people often criticized her for them. Eventually though, she attracted the Greek king of the gods Zeus, and they soon had a daughter together named Thalia Grace. After Thalia was born, Zeus left them just like the average godly parent, but Beryl couldn't handle this. She went insane and started to drink again, which made her an unreliable and pretty absent parent to Thalia. Growing up, Thalia learned to never trust her mother, and this went on for 6 years. 6 years later, Jupiter, or Zeus's Roman form, came back to Beryl, and although we don't really know why he came back after so many years, we can assume that Jupiter simply felt bad for her. Jupiter's arrival helped Beryl a lot, and for a while, she was actually pretty okay. They even had another child, and this time, it was a boy who would go on to be Jason Grace. However, Jupiter left again. Unlike earlier, it was clear that Zeus was not coming back no matter what, and this was because Beryl made all sorts of big requests, like asking him to bring her to Mount Olympus, or even making her immortal, and Zeus had had enough. With Zeus gone a second time, Beryl's instability came back, and she was drinking much more. In this mental state, she even blamed Hera or Zeus's wife for what was happening because she believed that Hera was jealous of her relationship with Zeus. This would go on for a long time, and this meant that she was barely even a mother to both Jason and Thalia. Thalia practically took care of Jason by herself, even if she herself needed a parent, and this would continue until one fateful day. 2 years after Jason was born, Beryl, Thalia, and Jason went to a park for a picnic. This was seemingly harmless on the surface, but in reality, Beryl did this because they were near the Wolf House, or a Roman training ground with the wolf goddess Lupa. Once Thalia left the place to go grab their picnic basket, Beryl went to the Wolf House and offered her son as a peace offering to Hera. She gave her 2-year-old son to a pack of wolves, and when Thalia came back for her, she was crying and telling Thalia that Jason was as good as dead. Thalia and Beryl's relationship worsened after that point, and it all led up to Thalia finally leaving their house. After Thalia left, we don't know much about what happened to Beryl, but we do know that she died in a car accident while under the influence of alcohol. And with all of these, I think it's safe to say that she was a horrible parent to both Jason and Thalia. Jason kind of glossed over this in his perspectives in the Heroes of Olympus, but this was mainly because he barely remembered her at all, because he was given up to the Wolf House at just 2 years old. Meanwhile, Thalia was old enough to remember everything, and she absolutely despised her mother, and she hated it whenever someone called her by her last name, because it reminded her of the parent she wished she had. After Beryl is Julius and Ruby Kane, or Carter and Sadie's parents from the Kane Chronicles. In this tier list, I placed them together because we don't really know much of them separately, and they're usually seen together anyway. Julius and Ruby were a loving couple, and they were nothing but kind and caring towards their 2 children. However, tragedy struck when Ruby sacrificed herself to stop Apophis, or the main villain of the series, and this was a very noble sacrifice that kept the whole universe safe. After his wife's death, Julius would go on to protect his 2 kids, and later on in the series, he would go on to host the Egyptian god Osiris, and this allowed him to be reunited with his wife forever. Now together, the 2 of them continue to work side by side and support their kids no matter what. And honestly, they're the definition of a power couple if you ask me. And knowing all of these, I'm placing them in the good tier. I would have placed them higher if we knew much more about them, because they're not always present in the books, so I think the good tier is a good place for them for now. Okay, we're almost done here. Up next is Randolph Chase from the Magnus Chase trilogy. Alright, this is kind of tough. Randolph is Frederick and Natalie's oldest brother, and he had a family of his own. He had 2 daughters with his wife Caroline, and from what we know, he was a caring enough dad. However, he was also really obsessed with one thing, and that was his life's mission to prove that the Norse gods were real and residing in Boston. This ended up being a real fact in the Magnus Chase trilogy, but nobody believed Randolph, which is why he went on a mission to find proof of the gods' existence. This eventually led up to him taking his family on one of these quests, and this unfortunately cost his entire family. The 4 of them were on a boat, and a huge wave hit them. Caroline and the kids died, and Randolph was the only survivor. This haunted him for the rest of his life, and he would never be able to forgive himself. This is all we know about Randolph and his family, but it really shows Randolph as a father who loved deeply, but he put his work above his own family. It might be a bit harsh, but I'm placing him in the okay tier. I don't think he was that bad of a parent, but I can't really bring myself to place him in the good tier either. And last but not the least is May Castellan, or Luke Castellan's mother from the PJO books. Out of all the parents here in this list, I consider May as probably the most tragic one, maybe rivaling even Randolph, whose fate is insanely overlooked but heartbreaking. But anyway, May was the lover of the Greek god Hermes, and the 2 of them were deeply in love. Eventually, they had a son named Luke, and the 3 of them were one happy family. This all changed, however, when one day, May and Hermes were talking, and Hermes mentioned the current situation of the Oracle of Delphi. The Oracle had a curse put on by Hades and made her spirit never move on to another host until the great prophecy was finished. Hearing this, May thought that she could try being the host because she was a mortal gifted with the ability to see through the mist. Hermes tried to argue against it, but May felt like this could be her destiny. And with no other choice, the couple went to Camp Haplet to see the Oracle, and things turned into tragedy. May tried to accept the spirit, but thanks to Hades' curse, she went insane instead. She started to see visions of her son's tragic future, and from this moment, May was never the same again. Sometimes, she was actually normal, But there were moments when her eyes turned green, and she started to say prophecies aloud, which terrified her son Luke. Luke eventually had enough of his mother's behavior, and he ran away from home at just the age of 12. However, Luke's disappearance didn't seem to faze May at all. Instead, she always thought that Luke was just outside and would come back to her any time. This made her assume that any person who went up to her house was Luke, and she would constantly make food for him in the hopes that he would stay with her. Ever since then, it is unknown whether her insanity ever lifted. So, until now, she can still be in that house, baking cookies for a son who will never return. And that's why I would place her in the good tier. She traumatized him with her prophecies and made him run away from home. But deep down, she was a mother who supported and loved him wholeheartedly. In another life, she could have been an incredible mom, and I think she deserves some credit. So I'm placing her in the good tier. And overall, that's how I would tier rank the mortal parents of these demigods. So how about you? How would you tier rank these parents? Let me know in the comments down below.